They called me the backbone. For 6 years, I held data core solutions together. Every system, every line of code that kept this billion-dollar company running, I built it. Me. Alone in server rooms at 3 a.m. while everyone else slept. While they collected bonuses and promotions, I was the shadow they never thanked. Until the day Marcus Brennan decided I was disposable. It was supposed to be our annual company-wide meeting. 300 employees packed into the grand auditorium, expensive suits and catered coffee, everyone pretending we were a family. I sat in the back row, exhausted from another 70-hour week, my laptop bag heavy with the backup drives I always carried. Paranoid habit, they called it. I called it being prepared. Marcus strutted onto the stage like he owned the world. And technically, he did own our world. CEO. Founder. The man whose face was on every tech magazine cover, talking about innovation and disruption while people like me actually built his empire in the dark. Today marks a new chapter for Data Core, he announced, his voice booming through the speakers. We're implementing a revolutionary AI system that will streamline operations, cut costs, and propel us into the future. My stomach dropped. I knew what that meant. I'd seen the budget reports he thought were encrypted. AI system was code for mass layoffs. For replacing people with algorithms. For erasing the very humans who made this company breathe. But I never expected what came next. However, Marcus continued, his eyes scanning the crowd, progress requires trust. It requires loyalty. And it requires eliminating those who compromise our vision. His gaze locked onto mine. 300 heads turned. My blood went cold. Emma Sullivan, he said, my name echoing like a curse. Stand up. I felt every eye burning into me. My hands trembled as I slowly rose, my laptop bag sliding off my lap onto the floor with a thud that sounded like thunder in the silent room. 6 years ago, I made a mistake, Marcus said, his voice dripping with manufactured disappointment. I trusted someone with the keys to our kingdom. Someone I believed shared our values. But surveillance footage from last week tells a different story. The massive screens behind him flickered to life. Grainy security footage showed me in the server room at night, my face illuminated by monitor glow, my fingers flying across keyboards. Corporate espionage, Marcus declared. Selling our proprietary code to competitors. Betraying everyone in this room. That's a lie. My voice cracked as I shouted. I was fixing the authentication protocols you ignored for months. I warned you the system was vulnerable. Security, Marcus snapped, cutting me off. Escort her out. 2 guards materialized beside me, their hands gripping my arms like iron vices. People I'd worked with for years, people I'd helped, people who'd smiled at me in the hallways, they all looked away. Some whispered. Others pulled out their phones to record my humiliation. This is insane. I struggled against the guard's grip. Marcus, you know I would never. You're finished in this industry, he said coldly. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. Now get her out of my sight. They dragged me through the center aisle. 300 silent witnesses to my destruction. My badge was ripped from my neck. My laptop bag abandoned on the floor. 6 years of my life, of sacrificed weekends and missed birthdays and relationships that crumbled because I chose this company over everything else, erased in 90 seconds. The auditorium doors slammed shut behind me. I stood in the hallway, alone, security guards boxing me in as they waited for the police Marcus had undoubtedly already called. My career was dead. My reputation was obliterated. And I had no idea why Marcus had just framed me for a crime I didn't commit. Then I heard it. A muffled scream from inside the auditorium. The guards exchanged confused glances. One pressed his earpiece, listening intently. What's happening? I demanded. Before he could answer, the auditorium doors burst open. Employees poured out, not in an organized fashion but in complete panic. Someone was crying. Others shouted into their phones. Through the chaos, I caught a glimpse of the screens inside. Every single one was flashing the same message in blood-red letters, primary key missing. System failure imminent. Authorization required. Marcus's voice, no longer smooth and controlled, shrieked through the speakers. Fix it now. Someone fix this now. The guards released me, distracted by the pandemonium. I stumbled backward, my mind racing. The primary key. The master encryption key that secured every single system in the data core infrastructure. Every client database, every financial record, every proprietary algorithm all locked behind that key. A key that only I knew how to properly manage. A key that Marcus had just escorted out of the building. My fear began transforming into something else. Something colder. Something that tasted like vindication. One of the guards barked into his radio, all exits sealed. No one leaves until this is resolved. I watched as Marcus emerged from the auditorium, his face purple with rage, his perfect hair disheveled. His eyes found mine across the crowd of panicking employees. You, he snarled, shoving people aside as he charged toward me. You did this. You sabotaged the system on your way out. I stood perfectly still. I've been standing right here, Marcus. With your security guards. I haven't touched a computer. Then you set it on a timer. Some kind of revenge code. Spit flew from his mouth. Fix it. Fix it right now or I swear you'll what? Something in my voice made him pause. Ruin my career. Destroy my reputation. Drag me out in front of everyone I know? Already done, Marcus. You did that yourself. His hand shot out and grabbed my collar. The guards moved to intervene, but the chaos had overwhelmed them. Someone was yelling about client data being inaccessible. Another person screamed that the financial systems were locked. Do you have any idea what this will cost? Marcus's breath was hot on my face. Billions, Emma. Billions in losses. Lawsuits. Destroyed client relationships. This company will be dead by morning. Then I guess you shouldn't have fired your lead systems architect, I said quietly. I'll tell them you did this deliberately. I'll make sure you go to prison. With what evidence? I tilted my head. I've been under guard the entire time. And the surveillance footage you just showed everyone proves I was only accessing the systems you gave me clearance to access. Whatever's happening now. That's not sabotage, Marcus. That's what happens when you build an empire on a foundation you don't understand. The color drained from his face as the implications sank in. Please, he whispered, his grip loosening. Emma, please. We can work this out. I'll double your salary. Triple it. Just fix this. I stepped back, straightening my collar. You have a whole auditorium full of employees, Marcus. And you're implementing revolutionary AI. I'm sure they'll figure it out. I turned and walked toward the exit. The guards were too overwhelmed to stop me. Behind me, I heard Marcus screaming orders that no one could fulfill, his empire collapsing in real time. My badge no longer worked, but in the confusion, no one stopped me as I pushed through the front doors into the cool afternoon air. I should have felt terrified. Unemployed. Facing potential legal battles. My name about to be dragged through every tech publication as a suspected corporate spy. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 6 years. Free. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it that morning, sparse, functional, the home of someone who lived at the office. I dropped my keys on the counter and stood in the silence, letting the adrenaline slowly drain from my system. My phone buzzed. 17 missed calls. 43 text messages. All from data core numbers. I turned the phone off. They would figure it out eventually. The primary key wasn't missing, it was just encrypted behind a security protocol I'd implemented 3 months ago after discovering vulnerabilities in our system. A protocol I'd documented extensively in reports that Marcus had ignored because they required actual investment in infrastructure rather than flashy AI announcements. The key would automatically restore in 72 hours. Enough time for minor chaos, but not enough to cause permanent damage. I wasn't interested in destroying the company, despite what Marcus believed. I wasn't a villain. I just wanted him to understand, for one brief moment, what happened when you treated people as disposable. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker to life as darkness fell. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that Marcus Brennan wasn't going to wait 72 hours. And the real nightmare was only beginning. The pounding on my door started at 11 p.m. I'd been half asleep on the couch, the wine glass empty beside me, when the thunderous banging jolted me awake. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stumbled to the door, peering through the peephole. 5 people stood in the hallway. I recognized 2 of them, Marcus's legal team. The others wore expensive suits and expressions that promised nothing good. Emma Sullivan, a woman's voice called. "This is Rebecca Torres from Hightower Legal. We need to speak with you immediately regarding the situation at DataCore Solutions." I kept the chain lock engaged as I cracked the door open. "It's 11 p.m. It's also a multi-billion-dollar emergency," Rebecca replied sharply. "You can speak with us voluntarily, or we can involve law enforcement. Your choice." I studied her face through the gap. She was maybe 40, with steel-gray eyes that had probably stared down corporate criminals far more intimidating than me. But there was something else there too, uncertainty. They weren't sure what they were dealing with. "I want my own lawyer present," I said. "We're prepared to offer you full immunity in exchange for immediate cooperation," Rebecca countered. "The clock is ticking, Ms. Sullivan. Every minute costs DataCore approximately $3 million in losses. $3 million per minute. That was higher than I'd calculated. Which meant the system failure had cascaded beyond just the primary key. Something else had gone wrong. Something I hadn't done. I opened the door fully. "I need 10 minutes to change and make a phone call." 5 minutes, Rebecca said, checking her watch. "And we're coming inside. Non-negotiable." They filed into my tiny apartment like an invading force. I grabbed my phone from the bedroom and called the only person I trusted, my former college roommate Sarah, who'd gone on to become a ruthlessly effective corporate attorney. "Emma." Sarah's sleepy voice answered. "It's almost midnight. I need you at my apartment right now," I said quietly, keeping my voice low. "DataCore is here with lawyers. Don't ask questions, just come." "On my way." I changed quickly, my mind racing through possibilities. The primary key encryption should have been isolated. It shouldn't have triggered a catastrophic cascade. Unless someone had been making unauthorized changes to the core architecture. Unless Marcus's push for the AI integration had introduced vulnerabilities I hadn't known about. Unless this was much worse than I thought. When I emerged from the bedroom, Rebecca was examining the modest setup I called home. No expensive furniture. No art on the walls. Just technical manuals and a wall of hard drives in fireproof cases. "You live like a monk," she observed. "I lived at the office," I corrected. "Until today. Let's talk about today." She gestured to the couch. "The system failure began approximately 7 minutes after you were escorted from the building. Surveillance shows you made no calls, accessed no devices, had no contact with anyone. Yet the moment you were removed, DataCore's entire infrastructure began collapsing." "Coincidence," I said. "Is it?" One of the men spoke up, tall, silver-haired, probably a senior partner. "Or did you set up a dead man's switch? A system that would trigger if you were terminated?" The accusation hung in the air. It was actually clever, and if I'd been a different person, it might have been exactly what I'd done. "I didn't sabotage anything," I said calmly. "But I did implement security protocols that Marcus Brennan refused to properly fund or maintain. If you're experiencing a system failure, it's because your infrastructure was held together with digital duct tape and prayers. We have evidence of unauthorized access to restricted systems," Rebecca said, pulling out a tablet. 3 months of surveillance footage showing you accessing databases and modifying core code outside your official duties. "I was trying to prevent exactly this," I shot back. "I sent 14 reports documenting critical vulnerabilities. I requested budget approvals for security upgrades. I warned Marcus personally that the system was compromised. Every single communication is documented in my work email." Rebecca and the silver-haired man exchanged glances. "Your work email was deleted this afternoon," Rebecca said carefully. "Along with all your files, reports, and system documentation." Ice flooded my veins. "What?" Marcus Brennan ordered a complete purge of your digital footprint from company servers approximately 20 minutes after you were escorted out. Every file, every email, every line of code you wrote erased. The room tilted. That wasn't just firing someone. That was eliminating evidence. That was preparation for a frame job. Why would he do that? I whispered, though part of me already knew the answer. We were hoping you could tell us, Rebecca said. Because right now, it looks like you're the scapegoat for something much bigger. Before I could respond, my doorbell rang. Sarah burst in without waiting for an answer, her power suit slightly wrinkled, her expression fierce. Nobody speaks, she commanded immediately. Emma, not another word. She scanned the legal team with practiced efficiency. Rebecca Torres. Hightower Legal. You represent Data Corps' corporate interests. Her eyes shifted to the silver-haired man. Douglas Hightower himself. Interesting. You don't show up for simple termination cases. This isn't simple, Douglas said. Clearly. Sarah pulled me toward the bedroom. Give us a moment. In the privacy of my bedroom, Sarah gripped my shoulders. Tell me everything. Fast. I ran through the entire day, the false accusation, the public humiliation, the system failure, the deleted files. Sarah's expression grew darker with each detail. Emma, listen to me very carefully, she said when I finished. Marcus Brennan is setting you up to take the fall for something catastrophic. The question is what? The system failure isn't that bad, I insisted. The primary key will restore in 72 hours. It's designed to. They're not here about a system failure, Sarah interrupted. If it was just that, they'd wait it out or bring in outside contractors. They're here because they need you to fix something that can't wait. Which means the failure is worse than you think, or... She paused. Or something else is happening that you don't know about. Like what? Let's find out. We returned to the living room. Sarah positioned herself between me and the legal team like a human shield. My client will cooperate under the following conditions, Sarah announced. Full immunity for any alleged crimes related to today's events. Reinstatement of her employment with back pay and a formal public apology from Marcus Brennan. And complete transparency about what's actually happening at Data Corps. Those terms are, Rebecca began. Non-negotiable, Sarah finished. Because you and I both know Emma didn't cause this problem. She's just the convenient scapegoat. So either you tell us the truth right now, or we walk away and let Data Corps burn. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. 15. 20. Finally, Douglas Hightower spoke. There's been a breach, he said quietly. Someone accessed Data Corps' client databases 3 hours ago. 27 million customer records. Financial information. Social security numbers. Healthcare data. Medical records. Everything. The room spun. A data breach of that magnitude would destroy Data Corps. Lawsuits. Regulatory fines. Criminal investigations. And you think I did it? I couldn't keep the shock from my voice. The breach originated from an admin account with your credentials, Rebecca said. The access logs show your username, your security clearances, your encryption keys. And it happened during the system failure, when all our monitoring systems were compromised. That's impossible, I said. I was escorted out. I've been here all evening. Check my home network logs, I haven't accessed anything. We know, Douglas admitted. Which is why we're here instead of the FBI. Yet. Someone cloned my credentials, I said, the pieces falling into place. Someone with access to the internal systems. Someone who knew exactly when to strike. Who? Rebecca demanded. I thought about the surveillance footage Marcus had shown. The way he'd known exactly where I was and when. The way he'd orchestrated my public humiliation with such precision. Marcus knew about the vulnerabilities, I said slowly. I told him directly. I documented them. And instead of fixing them, he deleted all my reports. Are you suggesting Marcus Brennan orchestrated a data breach of his own company? Douglas's skepticism was evident. I'm suggesting someone did. And they framed me for it. I looked at Sarah. What do we do? Sarah's smile was predatory. We prove it. How? Rebecca asked. I stood, walking to my wall of hard drives in their fireproof cases. Because Marcus made a critical mistake. He assumed I only kept my work on company servers. I pulled out one specific drive, its case marked with yesterday's date. I back up everything. Every report. Every email. Every piece of documentation. And I keep 3 months of rolling system logs that mirror everything happening on DataCore's network. I held up the drive. If someone used my credentials to access those databases, it'll be in here. And we'll be able to prove it wasn't me. Douglas and Rebecca exchanged glances. Some silent decision passed between them. Connect it, Douglas said. I set up my personal laptop air-gapped from any network, impossible to trace or hack remotely. As the drive mounted and files began appearing, I pulled up my log analysis tools. This will take a few minutes, I said, fingers flying across the keyboard. But I'll be able to show you the exact. I stopped. The blood drained from my face as I stared at the screen. What? Sarah leaned over my shoulder. What is it? The logs, I whispered. They show I accessed the systems. My credentials. My encryption keys. The timestamps match exactly. But you were here, Sarah insisted. I know. My voice shook. But according to this, I was also there. At DataCore. In the building. Using the physical security terminals that require biometric authentication. Rebecca moved closer to see the screen. Biometric means fingerprints or facial recognition. Both, I confirmed. You can't fake those. You can clone credentials, but you can't fake biometric scans. Not in real time. Unless someone had your fingerprints and facial data, Douglas said quietly. How would they get? I trailed off as the horrifying realization hit. The annual security audit. 3 months ago. They collected updated biometric data from all employees. Fingerprints, facial scans, retinal images. For the new security system. Marcus runs the security systems personally, Rebecca said. He insisted on it during the last board meeting. Said he wanted direct oversight. We all understood at the same moment. Marcus hadn't just framed me. He'd systematically created a perfect clone of my digital identity. Months in advance. Planning this exact scenario. But why? I said aloud. Why go through all this? Why breach his own company? Sarah pulled out her phone and started typing rapidly. Give me a minute. She paced while reading, her expression growing darker. Finally, she showed us her screen, a financial news article from earlier that week. DataCore announced a merger with Technorth Industries, she read. Deal valued at $4 billion. Pending regulatory approval. I didn't know about any merger, I said. Because it was confidential, Douglas replied. Only the executive board knew. The public announcement came today. Sarah continued reading. Technorth specializes in security infrastructure. The merger would create the largest cybersecurity company in North America. She looked up. What happens to a $4 billion merger if one company suddenly suffers a catastrophic data breach? The deal dies, Rebecca said quietly. Technorth would walk away. The stock price would collapse. And who benefits from that? Sarah pressed. Douglas pulled out his own phone, making a call. After a moment, pull Marcus Brennan's financial records. Personal trading accounts. Last 6 months. Yes, now. We waited in tense silence. My mind raced through the implications. If Marcus had orchestrated this breach, if he'd framed me to cover his tracks, then Douglas's phone rang. He listened, his face hardening. Thank you. Send me everything. He looked at us. Marcus Brennan purchased $17 million in DataCore short positions over the last 3 months. Through offshore accounts and shell corporations, but traceable. He bet against his own company. The full picture crystallized. His destroying DataCore deliberately, I said. The breach. The system failure. All of it. He tanks the company, the merger dies, the stock crashes, and he makes a fortune shorting it. And you take the fall, Sarah added. The disgruntled employee who committed corporate espionage. Perfect scapegoat. Rebecca was already on her phone. We need to contact the SEC. The FBI. This is securities fraud on a massive scale. Wait, I said. If we go public now, Marcus will destroy any remaining evidence. He'll claim I fabricated these logs, that I'm trying to cover my own crimes. It'll be his word against mine. What are you suggesting? Douglas asked. I looked at the data on my screen. At the perfect digital forgery of my identity. At the evidence of months of premeditation. I'm suggesting we beat him at his own game, I said quietly. He thinks I'm helpless. He thinks I'm destroyed. But he made one critical mistake. What's that? Sarah asked. I smiled, cold and sharp. He taught me how the system works. And he left me alive. Over the next 12 hours, we built our case in absolute secrecy. Douglas brought in a small team of investigators he personally trusted, people who'd worked corporate fraud cases for decades. Rebecca coordinated with federal regulators, preparing the groundwork for criminal charges. Sarah handled the legal strategy, building an airtight case that would withstand any defense Marcus could afford. And I did what I did best, I traced every digital footprint Marcus Brennan had left behind. He'd been clever. Months of preparation, layers of obfuscation, carefully timed attacks. But clever wasn't the same as perfect. And I knew the data core systems better than anyone alive. I'd built them. Here, I said, highlighting a segment of code. This is where he cloned my credentials. He used his own admin access to duplicate my biometric data from the security audit files. Sarah leaned in. Can you prove it was him specifically? The access logs show his personal encryption key. He forgot to mask it. Probably because he didn't expect anyone to dig this deep. I pulled up another screen. And here's where he modified the AI system he announced yesterday. It wasn't designed to streamline operations. It was designed to create systematic vulnerabilities that would make the data breach easier. He spent 6 months setting this up, Douglas muttered. The merger announcement. The short positions. The AI system. Your termination. All perfectly orchestrated. Almost perfectly, I corrected. He didn't account for me backing up everything. And he underestimated how much I understood about the infrastructure. Rebecca checked her watch. The automatic key restoration happens in 43 hours. That's when DataCore's systems will come back online. Marcus will expect the breach to be discovered then, triggering the stock collapse. Then we have 43 hours to end him first, Sarah said. How? I asked. She smiled. By giving Marcus exactly what he wants. The plan was insane. Dangerous. Possibly illegal, depending on how you interpreted certain laws. But it was also the only way to catch Marcus in an undeniable act. We would let him think he'd won. At 9 a.m. the next morning, I received a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened with everyone gathered around. Marcus's voice, smooth again, back in control. Emma. I know you're screening calls. I want you to know that I'm willing to drop all charges if you cooperate. Come to my private office tonight at 8 p.m. Alone. We'll work something out. A quiet settlement. A confidential agreement. You disappear, and I'll make sure you're taken care of financially. Let's not destroy each other over this. Sarah raised an eyebrow. He's scared. He should be, I replied. The system restoration is in 39 hours. He's running out of time. You can't go to that meeting, Douglas said firmly. It's too dangerous. She won't be alone, Rebecca countered. I'll have people stationed throughout the building. Surveillance. Recording equipment. If Marcus tries anything, he won't try anything physical, I interrupted. That's not how he works. He'll try to buy me off or threaten me. And I'm going to let him show his hand. Sarah gripped my arm. Emma, if this goes wrong, it won't. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus back. He answered on the first ring. I'll be there, I said simply, then hung up. Now what? One of Douglas's investigators asked. I opened my laptop. Now we prepare the evidence package. Everything we've found. Every log file, every financial record, every piece of data that proves Marcus orchestrated this entire scheme. We prepare it for simultaneous release to the SEC, FBI, major media outlets, and Datacorp's board of directors. Simultaneous? Rebecca questioned. Midnight tonight, I confirmed. Whether or not my meeting with Marcus goes well. By the time the sun rises tomorrow, the whole world will know what he did. And if he offers you enough money to disappear? Douglas asked. No judgment, Ms. Sullivan. Most people would take it. I thought about 6 years of my life. About being dragged through an auditorium in front of 300 people. About having my reputation destroyed, my work deleted, my identity stolen and weaponized. He already took everything from me, I said quietly. The only thing I have left is the truth. And I'm not for sale. The hours crept by with agonizing slowness. We reviewed the evidence a dozen times, making sure every piece was documented, verified, and legally obtained. Rebecca coordinated with federal investigators, getting search warrants ready to execute the moment we gave the signal. Sarah prepared injunctions to freeze Marcus's assets and prevent him from fleeing. At 7 p.m., I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, getting ready. I dressed carefully, professional but not expensive. The employee Marcus had discarded, coming to him desperate and broken. Exactly what he expected to see. Sarah drove me to the Datacorp building. The parking lot was nearly empty at this hour. Only a few cars remained, including Marcus's distinctive Tesla in the executive spot. Surveillance team is in position. Rebecca's voice came through the earpiece I wore, disguised as a simple hearing aid. Audio and video. We've got you covered. I climbed out of the car. Sarah squeezed my hand. Whatever happens, we have enough to destroy him. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do, I replied. This ends tonight. The building felt different after hours, darker, emptier, haunted by the ghosts of all the hours I'd spent here. My badge no longer worked, but Marcus had left my name on the visitor list. The night security guard barely looked up as he waved me through. The elevator ride to the top floor felt eternal. My heart hammered against my ribs. I ran through the plan again in my mind, but part of me knew that plans rarely survived contact with reality. The executive floor was silent except for the hum of climate control. Marcus's corner office glowed with warm light at the end of the hallway. His door stood open. I walked forward, each step measured and calm despite the fear coursing through my veins. Marcus sat behind his massive desk, a glass of expensive whiskey in his hand. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, hair less perfect than usual. Good. He should be tired. Emma, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Thank you for coming. I sat, saying nothing. Let him lead. I want to apologize, Marcus began, and I almost laughed at the audacity. Things got out of hand yesterday. The pressure of the merger, the system failures, I made a mistake. A mistake, I repeated flatly. I should never have accused you publicly like that. It was unprofessional. He sipped his whiskey. I'm prepared to offer you a settlement. $2 million. Tax-free, paid into any offshore account you specify. In exchange, you sign a comprehensive NDA and disappear quietly. $2 million. More money than I'd made in my entire career. Enough to start over anywhere in the world. What about my reputation? I asked. You told 300 people I was a corporate spy. I'll send a company-wide email tomorrow. A misunderstanding. Heat of the moment. Your name will be cleared. And the data breach. Something flickered in his eyes. What about it? The 27 million customer records that were stolen yesterday. Using my credentials. I leaned forward. That breach, Marcus. He set down his glass carefully. That was you. No, it wasn't. The logs can be faked, I interrupted. By someone with admin access. By someone who cloned my biometric data and credentials. By someone who spent months setting up the perfect frame job. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. You're upset, Marcus said smoothly. You're not thinking clearly. Take the money, Emma. Walk away. Start fresh somewhere else. Why did you do it? I asked. Why destroy your own company? I don't know what you're talking about. The short positions. The offshore accounts. 4 billion in merger deals that die when the breach goes public. You'll make hundreds of millions shorting your own stock. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair rolling back. Those are serious accusations. Defamatory, even. I'd be careful what you say. Is that a threat? It's advice. He walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. You're intelligent, Emma. Too intelligent to throw your life away on some conspiracy theory. Take my offer. $2 million. You disappear tonight, and everyone's happy. What if I say no? He turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw the real Marcus Brennan. Not the charming CEO or the tech visionary. The cold calculator behind the mask. Then I'll destroy you, he said simply. I have evidence of corporate espionage. Surveillance footage. Access logs. Financial records showing unexplained deposits into your accounts. Yes, I planted those too. I'll bury you in legal fees and criminal charges. By the time you prove your innocence, if you ever do, you'll be bankrupt and unemployable. You'd commit perjury? Frame an innocent person? I'd do whatever necessary to protect my interests. He smiled. That's what winners do, Emma. They make hard choices. You were always too soft. Too moral. That's why you're a mid-level employee and I'm running $1 billion company. I felt the rage building in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. What about the 27 million people whose data you stole? What happens to them? Identity theft. Credit fraud. Medical privacy violations. Not my problem. He shrugged. People's data gets breached all the time. They'll get over it. You're a monster. I'm a realist. He returned to his desk, pulling out a contract. Last chance. Sign this, take the money, and we both walk away. I stood slowly. I have a counteroffer. Oh. You resign immediately. You cooperate fully with federal investigators. You make restitution to every person affected by your breach. And maybe you only spend 20 years in prison instead of life. Marcus laughed. You have no proof. I have all the proof. I pulled out my phone, showing him the screen. Every log file. Every financial transaction. Every piece of evidence showing you orchestrated this entire scheme. And in about 3 hours, it all gets released to the SEC, FBI, and every major media outlet in the country. His laughter died. You're bluffing. Am I? We stared at each other across the desk. Two people who'd worked together for 6 years, who'd built an empire together, now enemies locked in a final confrontation. Even if you have evidence, Marcus said carefully, it's inadmissible. You obtained it through unauthorized access to company systems. Hacking. You'd be confessing to a crime. I backed up my own work files, I replied. Nothing unauthorized about that. And the financial records came from public filings and legal subpoenas. All perfectly admissible. His jaw clenched. How much do you want? 5 million? 10? Name your price. I already told you. I'm not for sale. Everyone's for sale. Not me. Marcus moved faster than I expected. He lunged across the desk, grabbing my phone. But I'd anticipated this. The phone in my hand was a decoy, a cheap backup loaded with dummy files. Looking for this? I held up my real phone, which had been recording everything from my jacket pocket. Every word, Marcus. Every threat. Every admission. All recorded. His face went white. You're wearing a wire. Several, actually. And there are federal investigators in this building right now, listening to every word. So please, keep threatening me. Keep admitting to securities fraud. It just makes the case stronger. Marcus stumbled backward, realization crashing down on him. No. No, this isn't, you can't, I already did. The office door opened. Rebecca Torres walked in, followed by 2 FBI agents and Douglas Hightower. Marcus Brennan, Rebecca announced, you're under arrest for securities fraud, conspiracy to commit corporate espionage, identity theft, and wire fraud. You have the right to remain silent. As the agent read him his rights, Marcus's eyes never left mine. The rage in them was pure and incandescent. But beneath it, I saw something else. Fear. Real, genuine fear of a man watching his empire crumble. You don't understand what you've done, he hissed as the agents handcuffed him. I gave you everything. I made you. Without me, you're nothing. Without me, I corrected quietly, you had nothing. I built those systems. I kept this company running. And you tried to make me disappear because you couldn't stand that someone else was essential. Emma, he started, but the agents were already pulling him toward the door. One more thing, I called after him. He stopped, looking back. The primary key? The system failure? It restores in 34 hours. Automatically. Everything you did, all this chaos, it was for nothing. The systems would have been fine by tomorrow night. Understanding dawned on his face. He'd panicked. Acted rashly. Destroyed everything for a problem that would have resolved itself. Enjoy prison, Marcus. They escorted him out. I stood in his office, in the space he'd ruled from, and felt the weight of 6 years finally lift from my shoulders. Douglas approached, extending his hand. That was incredibly brave, Ms. Sullivan. And incredibly reckless. It was necessary, I replied, shaking his hand. Will it stick? Will he actually go to prison? With what we recorded tonight? Absolutely. He confessed to multiple federal crimes while threatening a witness. Plus the financial evidence, the system logs, his own admission about planting evidence, his done. Douglas smiled grimly. Marcus Brennan will spend the next several decades in a cell. Rebecca joined us. The board of directors has been notified. Emergency meeting in 1 hour. They're expecting you, Emma. Me? Why? Because DataCore needs leadership. Real leadership. Someone who actually understands the systems. Someone who put the company's interests above their own. She tilted her head. Unless you'd rather not. I thought about walking away. Starting fresh somewhere else. Never dealing with corporate politics again. But I also thought about the 300 employees whose jobs depended on this company. The 27 million customers whose data had been compromised. The systems that still needed to be properly secured. I want full executive authority over all technical operations, I said. Direct reporting to the board. Budget approval for security infrastructure. And I want it in writing that no one, not the CEO, not the board, not anyone, can overrule my security decisions. Douglas and Rebecca exchanged glances. Done, Douglas said. Anything else? Marcus's entire executive team gets security audits. Anyone involved in this scheme gets removed. I want honest people, not politicians. Fair. And I want a public apology. Company-wide. Correcting everything Marcus said about me. That's already being drafted, Rebecca assured me. It'll go out in the morning. I nodded. Then let's save this company. The emergency board meeting lasted 4 hours. Sarah sat beside me as I walked them through everything, the security vulnerabilities Marcus had ignored, the breach he'd orchestrated, the evidence of his fraud. Some board members looked horrified. Others looked angry. A few looked terrified about their own potential liability. The system restoration happens in 30 hours, I concluded. At that point, all primary functions will be back online. But we have significant work ahead. Client notification. Credit monitoring services. Security overhauls. Federal investigations. This will take months to resolve fully. The board chair, an older woman named Patricia Chen, studied me carefully. Mr. Hightower tells us you could have taken Marcus's buyout offer. $2 million to disappear. Why didn't you? Because it wasn't about the money, I said simply. It was about doing the right thing. 27 million people had their data stolen. They deserved justice more than I deserved a payout. Patricia nodded slowly. The board would like to formally offer you the position of Chief Technology Officer. Full executive compensation, stock options, and the technical authority you requested. Additionally, we're prepared to offer a $5 million signing bonus as compensation for your mistreatment. $5 million. More than twice what Marcus had offered. I accept the CTO position, I said. But donate the bonus to a fund for identity theft victims. Everyone affected by the breach. Make it a public commitment. Several board members looked shocked. You're serious? Patricia asked. Completely. Those people suffered because of this company's failures. The least we can do is help them recover. Patricia smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen all night. Motion approved unanimously. Welcome to the executive team, Ms. Sullivan. As we left the boardroom, Sarah pulled me aside. Do you have any idea how insane you are? You just turned down $5 million. I know. Normal people don't do that. I'm not normal people. I grinned. I'm the woman who just took down Marcus Brennan. News of Marcus's arrest hit the media at 6 a.m. By noon, it was the top story on every tech news site, business network, and financial publication. The headlines wrote themselves: DataCore CEO arrested for securities fraud. Tech giant's leader accused of orchestrating breach of own company. Marcus Brennan faces life in prison for corporate conspiracy. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Interview requests. Job offers from competitors. Messages from former colleagues apologizing for not defending me. I ignored most of them. But one call I did take. Emma Sullivan, I answered. Ms. Sullivan, this is Jennifer Reeves from the FBI's Cybercrime Division. We'd like to discuss consulting arrangements. Your work unraveling this case was exceptional. I'm not interested in law enforcement work, I replied. But I'll cooperate fully with the investigation. We appreciate that. One more thing, we found something during our search of Brennan's office. A list of names. Other executives at other companies he was working with. This goes deeper than DataCore. My blood ran cold. How much deeper? We're not sure yet. But we could use someone with your skills to help us find out. I thought about it. About justice. About preventing this from happening to someone else. Send me the details, I said. I'll look into it. Over the next 72 hours, DataCore systems gradually restored. I worked around the clock with my new team, people I'd personally vetted, people who actually understood security over showmanship, to ensure everything came back online safely. The client notification process was brutal. 27 million people had to be contacted, offered credit monitoring, and walked through security protocols. The legal team estimated lawsuits in the hundreds. But we'd face them honestly, not with cover-ups and lies. Marcus's assets were frozen. His offshore accounts seized. Federal investigators found evidence of over $400 million in short positions and derivative bets against DataCore. He'd planned to make $500 million from the company's collapse. Instead, he faced 83 federal charges and likely sentences totaling several lifetimes. The merger with TechNorth was renegotiated. After seeing how we handled the crisis, with transparency and accountability, they actually became more interested. The new deal was smaller but more focused on genuine security integration rather than corporate empire building. 3 months later, I stood in front of the same auditorium where Marcus had destroyed me. But this time, I was the one on stage. And the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. Thank you all for coming, I began, looking out at the packed room. 300 faces. But this time they were smiling. Supportive. Grateful. 3 months ago, I was escorted out of this building in handcuffs. Accused of crimes I didn't commit. Humiliated in front of everyone I'd worked with for 6 years. I paused. Today, I'm standing here as your CTO because of what happened that day. Not in spite of it. Marcus Brennan tried to make me a scapegoat. He tried to erase 6 years of my work, destroy my reputation, and profit from chaos. But he made several critical mistakes. First, he underestimated how much I understood the systems I built. Second, he assumed I could be bought or intimidated. And third, most importantly, he forgot that companies aren't built by CEOs alone. They're built by every person who shows up, does the work, and refuses to compromise their integrity. Applause rippled through the audience. We have a long road ahead. Rebuilding trust. Strengthening security. Proving that DataCore is more than one corrupt executive. But I believe we can do it. Not because I'm standing up here, but because you're all sitting out there. The real backbone of this company. So thank you. For believing the truth. For standing with me. And for being part of something bigger than any one person's greed. The applause was deafening. After the meeting, a young woman approached me, one of the junior developers I'd mentored years ago. I just wanted to say thank you, she said quietly. When Marcus fired you, I almost quit. A lot of us almost quit. But you showed us that doing the right thing matters. Even when it costs you everything. It didn't cost me everything, I replied. It gave me everything that mattered. That evening, I sat in my new office, the one that used to be Marcus's. I'd redecorated completely. No expensive art, no ego wall of magazine covers. Just technical diagrams, family photos, and a whiteboard covered in security protocols. Sarah knocked on my open door. Still here? You're supposed to have work-life balance now. Old habits, I admitted. Come in. She settled into a chair. I have news. The FBI found 12 other executives in Marcus's conspiracy. All of them betting against their own companies. All of them planning similar schemes. Will they be prosecuted? Already started. Your work on the DataCore case gave them the blueprint. They're calling it the biggest securities fraud case in 20 years. I nodded slowly. Good. There's something else. Sarah pulled out a folder. Marcus wants to make a deal. He'll testify against the others in exchange for reduced sentencing. How reduced? 20 years instead of life. I thought about it. About justice and vengeance and the difference between them. Tell the prosecutors to accept it, I said. Getting the others is more important than maximum punishment for Marcus. As long as he serves real time. You're sure? I'm sure. This was never about revenge. It was about accountability. Sarah smiled. You're a better person than I am. You would have done the same thing. Maybe. But I would have taken the $5 million. We both laughed. 6 months after that terrible day in the auditorium, I received an invitation to speak at a cybersecurity conference. The topic, ethics in technology leadership. I almost declined. I wasn't comfortable with public speaking, with being held up as some kind of example. But then I thought about that young developer who'd thanked me. About all the people who needed to hear that doing the right thing was possible. I accepted. The conference was massive, thousands of tech professionals from around the world. When I walked onto the stage, the applause started before I even reached the microphone. My name is Emma Sullivan, I began. And I'm here to tell you about the worst day of my life. The day my CEO publicly accused me of corporate espionage, had me dragged out by security, and destroyed my reputation in front of 300 witnesses. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. I'm also here to tell you about the best day of my life. The same day. Because that was the day I learned what I was really made of. I walked them through the entire story. The accusations. The system failure. The discovery of Marcus's scheme. The decision to fight back rather than disappear. I had multiple opportunities to take money and walk away, I explained. 2 million. 5 million. Enough to never work again. But I realized something important. Your integrity isn't for sale. Not at any price. There's a saying in tech, move fast and break things. But breaking things has consequences. Real people get hurt. Data gets stolen. Lives get ruined. And when that happens, someone needs to stand up and say this isn't acceptable. Marcus Brennan believed that success meant doing whatever it took to win. Lying. Cheating. Destroying others. And for a while, it worked. He built a billion-dollar company. He became famous. He had power. But in the end, what did he have? Nothing real. No genuine relationships. No honest achievements. Just money built on a foundation of fraud. I've learned that real success isn't measured in stock prices or magazine covers. It's measured in whether you can look yourself in the mirror. Whether the people around you trust you. Whether you made the world slightly better than you found it. So I'm asking all of you, everyone in this room, everyone building the technology that shapes our world, make different choices than Marcus Brennan. Value people over profits. Choose transparency over convenient lies. Build systems that protect users rather than exploit them. Because if you don't, someone like me will come along and tear down everything you built. Not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. Because the truth always comes out eventually. And when it does, which side of the story do you want to be on? The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, dozens of people approached with their own stories. Bosses who tried to make them scapegoats. Companies that prioritized profit over ethics. Moments when they'd had to choose between career and conscience. What you did was inspiring, a young engineer told me. I've been keeping quiet about security vulnerabilities at my company because I'm afraid of getting fired. But after hearing you, I think I need to speak up. Do it the right way, I advised. Document everything. Build your case carefully. Have a lawyer ready. But yes, speak up. Because silence enables bad actors. What if they fire me anyway? Then you'll survive, I said. I did. And I'm better off for it. 1 year after Marcus's arrest, DataCore had transformed completely. Revenue was down initially, the breach had damaged client relationships and triggered lawsuits. But slowly, our reputation rebuilt. Companies saw how we'd handled the crisis with honesty and accountability. They saw that we'd fired corrupt leadership and installed people who actually cared about security. We became known not as the company that suffered a breach, but as the company that faced it head-on and emerged stronger. The 27 million affected customers received comprehensive support, credit monitoring, identity theft insurance, direct communication about security measures. It was expensive, but it was right. Marcus Brennan pleaded guilty to 47 counts of fraud and conspiracy. In exchange for testimony against his co-conspirators, he received 23 years in federal prison. He'd be 71 when released. I didn't attend his sentencing. I'd moved on. The FBI's investigation into the broader conspiracy led to 38 arrests across 16 companies. Total fraud estimated at over $3 billion. My consulting work helped unravel the web of corruption, and I found unexpected satisfaction in it. Sarah suggested I write a book about the experience. Publishers were interested, the story had everything. Betrayal, revenge, corporate intrigue, justice prevailing. But I declined. This isn't about me being famous, I told her. It's about the work. The actual technical work of building secure systems and holding leaders accountable. That's not glamorous or exciting. It's just necessary. You're insufferable, Sarah said affectionately. Most people would milk this for everything it's worth. I'm not most people. No, she agreed. You're really not. 2 years after the auditorium incident, I was invited back to speak at DataCore's annual meeting. But this time, it was a celebration. We'd not only recovered from the breach, we'd become an industry leader in cybersecurity. Other companies studied our protocols. Our transparency became a model. And our commitment to ethical leadership attracted the best talent in the industry. I stood on that same stage where Marcus had destroyed me and looked out at 600 faces now. The company had grown significantly. 2 years ago, I stood here being accused of crimes I didn't commit, I began. Today, I stand here as living proof that the truth matters. That integrity matters. That doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything, is always worth it. We've accomplished something remarkable together. We've shown that companies can prioritize security over convenience, ethics over profit, people over stock prices. And we've proven that this approach isn't just morally right, it's good business. But we can't get comfortable. There are still Marcus Brennans out there. Still executives who think rules don't apply to them. Still companies that will cut corners if they think they can get away with it. So our work isn't done. We have to remain vigilant. We have to keep speaking up. We have to keep choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. And most importantly, we have to remember why we do this work. Not for fame or fortune. Not for power or prestige. but because millions of people trust us with their data, their privacy, their security. That's not a responsibility we can ever take lightly. Thank you for standing with me. Thank you for believing in honest work over convenient lies. And thank you for being part of a company that proves doing the right thing is possible. The applause was thunderous. After the meeting, Patricia Chen, the board chair, pulled me aside. The board has been discussing succession planning, she said. Our current CEO is retiring in 18 months. We'd like to offer you the position. CEO. The role Marcus had held. The ultimate authority. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully. But I'm not interested. Patricia looked surprised. May I ask why? You've been extraordinary. You've transformed this company. Because I'm good at what I do now. Technical leadership. Security architecture. Holding people accountable. But running the entire company? That requires different skills. Political skills. I'd rather stay where I'm effective than chase a title that doesn't fit. That's remarkably self-aware. I learned from watching Marcus, I replied. He wanted power for its own sake. He wanted the title more than the responsibility. I don't want to make that mistake. Then who would you recommend? I thought about the people I'd worked with over the past 2 years. The ones who combined technical understanding with genuine leadership ability. Jennifer Watts, I said. She's been running our client recovery program. She understands both the technology and the people side. She'd be exceptional. Patricia made a note. We'll consider it. But Emma, the board wants you to know you'll always have a home here. At whatever level you choose. I appreciate that. 3 years after Marcus's arrest, I gave my final public interview about the incident. The journalist was young, earnest, clearly viewing me as some kind of folk hero. I tried to dispel that notion immediately. I'm not a hero, I said flatly. I'm someone who did their job and refused to be a scapegoat. That shouldn't be heroic, it should be normal. But you took enormous risks, the journalist pressed. You could have gone to prison if the evidence hadn't supported you. I could have. But I knew I was right. And I trusted that the truth would come out. I paused. Though I'll admit, there were some very dark moments where I wasn't sure. What kept you going? Stubbornness, mostly. I smiled slightly. And anger. Marcus tried to erase me. To make me disappear. I couldn't let him win. Do you ever regret how you handled it? The confrontation in his office was incredibly dangerous. Every single day, I admitted. I'm lucky it worked out. Lucky Marcus was arrogant enough to confess. Lucky the FBI believed me. Lucky I had friends like Sarah and allies like Douglas Hightower. If any of those factors had been different, I'd probably be in prison right now instead of Marcus. So you don't recommend others follow your example? I recommend others build their case carefully. Document everything. Work within legal systems. Find trustworthy allies. And most importantly, understand that doing the right thing doesn't always lead to Hollywood endings. Sometimes good people lose. Sometimes corrupt leaders win. But you still have to try. What would you say to Marcus Brennan if you could speak to him now? I thought about it carefully. About everything he'd done. Everything he'd cost me and so many others. I'd say thank you, I finally answered. The journalist looked shocked. Thank you. He taught me what I'm capable of. He showed me that I'm stronger than I knew. And he proved that my work had value. Why else would he need to frame me so elaborately? I leaned back. Marcus spent 6 months planning my destruction. I spent 72 hours dismantling his empire. In a strange way, I owe him for that clarity. That's a remarkably gracious perspective. It's not grace. It's freedom. Marcus Brennan is rotting in prison, consumed by bitterness about what he lost. I'm building systems, mentoring young engineers, and sleeping well at night. Who really won? The interview ended there. The journalist thanked me profusely, promised the article would be respectful, and left. Sarah, who'd been sitting in on the interview, shook her head. You're too forgiving. I'm not forgiving him, I corrected. I'm refusing to let him live rent-free in my head. There's a difference. Still. After everything he did, he lost everything. His freedom. His reputation. His company. His fortune. And I gained everything that matters. Technical authority. Respect. Peace of mind. The knowledge that I stood up when it counted. You really don't hate him? I considered the question honestly. I don't feel anything about Marcus Brennan. He's irrelevant. A cautionary tale. A footnote in a larger story about corporate ethics. And that's enough for you. That's everything. 5 years after the auditorium incident, I made a decision. I was 43 years old. I'd been Datacorp's CTO for nearly 5 years. I'd rebuilt the company's security infrastructure, mentored dozens of young engineers, consulted on major federal investigations, and become one of the most respected voices in cybersecurity. And I was exhausted. I'm stepping down, I told Patricia Chen over coffee. She didn't look surprised. I've been expecting this conversation. Really? You've been restless for months. Anyone paying attention could see it. She sipped her coffee. What's next? Teaching, I said. I want to work with university students. Teach them not just coding and security, but ethics. How to navigate corporate politics. How to stand up to pressure. The things I wish someone had taught me. You'd be exceptional at that. I hope so. I smiled. I've spent 20 years building systems. Now I want to build people. Datacorp will miss you. Datacorp will be fine. Jennifer is ready to take over as CTO. She's better at the job than I ever was, more patient, better communicator, less likely to tell board members they're idiots. Patricia laughed. You've grown more diplomatic. Marginally. When are you leaving? 3 months. Time to transition everything properly. And then I start the next chapter. My last day at Datacorp was quiet. No big ceremony, no dramatic speeches. Just a small gathering of the team I'd built over 5 years. You taught us that doing the right thing matters, Jennifer said, presenting me with a framed print, the first line of code I'd ever written for Datacorp, 19 years ago. Even when it costs everything. Especially when it costs everything, I corrected. Anyone can be ethical when it's easy. We shared stories, laughed about close calls and system failures, and toasted to the future. Then I packed my modest collection of personal items, no executive thochotchks, just family photos and technical manuals, and walked out the door. I didn't look back. The teaching position at Carnegie Mellon started that fall. Ethics in Technology was the course title, and I'd fought hard for it to be mandatory rather than elective. Most engineering programs ignore ethics entirely, I argued to the dean. Then we're surprised when graduates build privacy-invading systems or work for companies with questionable practices. We have to do better. The dean agreed, and suddenly I had a classroom full of bright-eyed 20-year-olds who thought technology was neutral and ethics were someone else's problem. I disabused them of that notion on day one. Raise your hand if you've heard the phrase move fast and break things, I said. Every hand went up. That mentality has broken democracy, enabled harassment, facilitated genocide, destroyed privacy, and ruined countless lives. So let's be clear from the start, you're not going to move fast and break things in my class. You're going to move thoughtfully and build things that don't harm people. They looked uncertain, maybe a little intimidated. You're all here because you're brilliant, I continued. But brilliance without ethics is just sophisticated harm. So we're going to learn to ask better questions. Not can we build this, but should we build this? Not is this profitable, but who does this hurt? Over the semester, we studied case after case. Cambridge Analytica. Theranos. The Boeing 737 MAX. And yes, Datacorp and Marcus Brennan. Professor Sullivan, one student asked when we reached the Datacorp case, were you scared? When you confronted Brennan? Terrified, I admitted. But fear isn't a reason not to act. It's information. It tells you the stakes are high, which means the decision matters. What if you'd been wrong? What if the evidence hadn't supported you? Then I would have gone to prison, and Marcus would have gotten away with it. Those were the stakes. But I wasn't wrong. I'd checked and rechecked everything. I'd built an airtight case. And I'd accepted the consequences of being wrong. How do we know when we're sure enough to act? You never know for certain. That's the hard part. But you gather the best evidence you can, you consult people you trust, and then you make a choice. Paralysis is also a choice, it just feels safer. Another student raised her hand. What about now? Do you think you made the right choice? I thought about Marcus in prison. About the 38 other executives who'd been held accountable. About the millions of people whose data was better protected because of the industry-wide reforms that followed. Yes, I said simply. Not because everything worked out perfectly, but because I couldn't have lived with myself otherwise. 10 years after the auditorium incident, I received an unexpected letter. It came from a federal prison in Pennsylvania. The return address listed the sender as Marcus Brennan. I almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity won out. The letter was handwritten, Marcus's once confident script now shaky and uncertain. Emma, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that you were right. I've had a decade to think about what I did. The lies I told. The people I hurt. The empire I built on fraud and betrayal. And I've realized something, I had everything, and it meant nothing. You took 2 million away from me. You chose integrity over money. At the time, I thought you were a fool. Now I understand you were the only wise person in the room. I destroyed my own life. Not you. Not the FBI. Me. My choices. My greed. My arrogance. You built something real. I built a house of cards that collapsed the moment anyone looked too closely. I'm not asking for anything. Not forgiveness, not absolution, not even acknowledgement. I just wanted you to know that you were right, and I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I'll be 80 years old if I live to see release. No family. No friends. No legacy except as a cautionary tale. That's justice, I suppose. Be well, Emma. You earned it. Marcus, I read the letter 3 times, looking for manipulation or hidden agenda. But it seemed genuine. A broken man acknowledging his mistakes far too late to matter. Sarah, reading it over my shoulder, snorted. Too little, too late. Maybe, I said. But at least he understands now. Do you feel vindicated? I thought about it. About the woman I'd been 10 years ago, dragged out of an auditorium, reputation destroyed, future uncertain. About everything I'd fought for and lost and rebuilt. I feel free, I said finally. He spent 10 years in a cage learning what I always knew. That's not vindication. That's just sad. Are you going to respond? No. There's nothing to say. He made his choices. I made mine. And we're both living with the consequences. I folded the letter and put it away. Not in the trash, but in a file labeled closed chapters. 15 years after that terrible day, I received a different kind of recognition. The National Cybersecurity Alliance announced their Lifetime Achievement Award. The ceremony was black tie, held in Washington, D.C., attended by politicians and industry leaders and people far more important than me. I almost didn't go. These kinds of events made me uncomfortable. But Sarah insisted, and I'd learned over the years that when Sarah insisted, it was easier just to comply. The award presentation showed a video montage of my career. Early work at Data Core. The confrontation with Marcus. The years rebuilding the company. My transition to teaching. Students I'd mentored who'd gone on to lead major security initiatives at tech companies worldwide. Dr. Emma Sullivan, the presenter, announced I'd finished my doctorate 5 years earlier. Finally checking that box has changed the landscape of corporate ethics in technology. Through her courage in exposing fraud, her commitment to transparent security practices, and her dedication to training the next generation of ethical technologists, she has made the digital world safer for millions of people. I walked onto the stage, accepted the award, a heavy glass sculpture that I'd probably never display, and faced an audience of 1,000 people. Thank you, I began. Though I'm not sure I deserve this. I just did what was necessary. 15 years ago, I made a choice. I could take money and disappear, or I could fight for the truth. I chose truth. Not because I'm a hero, I'm not. But because the alternative was betraying everything I believed in. Since then, I've watched this industry grapple with ethics in real time. We've seen data breaches, privacy violations, algorithmic discrimination, and countless other failures. And each time, we have to ask, who will stand up? Who will say this is wrong? Who will risk their career for what's right? The answer needs to be, all of us. Every single person building technology has a responsibility to the people who use it. That's not optional. It's not something we do when it's convenient. It's the baseline requirement for being in this industry. I've spent the last decade teaching students that ethics aren't a constraint on innovation, they're a prerequisite. That building systems that respect privacy, ensure security, and protect vulnerable populations isn't just good morality. It's good engineering. So this award isn't really for me. It's for everyone who's ever spoken up when it was dangerous. Everyone who's ever chosen principle over profit. Everyone who's ever said no to a powerful person demanding something unethical. We're all standing on the shoulders of whistleblowers and reformers and ordinary people who did extraordinary things. My story isn't special. It's just one example of what happens when you refuse to be silent. Keep refusing. Keep speaking up. Keep fighting for what's right. Because the moment we stop, people like Marcus Brennan win. Thank you. The standing ovation was long and genuine. Afterward, dozens of people approached with stories of their own moments of choice. Times they'd stood up to bosses. Times they'd reported fraud. Times they'd sacrificed personal gain for collective good. A young woman, maybe 25, waited until the crowd cleared before approaching me. "Dr. Sullivan," she said nervously, "I wanted to thank you. 5 years ago, I was a junior developer at a company that was selling user data without consent. I knew it was wrong, but I was terrified of losing my job. What happened?" I asked gently. "I read about your case. About how you stood up even when it cost you everything. And I realized I had to do the same." She smiled tremulously. "I reported them to the FTC. I lost my job. I was blacklisted for 2 years. But they were fined, the practices stopped, and millions of users were protected. And now I run my own security consulting firm. We help companies build ethical systems from the ground up. Business is good." I gripped her hand. "You did the right thing. I know. Because you showed me it was possible." She walked away, and I stood there feeling the weight of impact. Not just the immediate consequence of stopping Marcus, but the ripples that spread outward. Students I taught who became leaders. Leaders who implemented ethical policies. Policies that protected real people with real lives. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe I was making a difference. 20 years after the auditorium incident, I received one final unexpected communication. An email from a stranger. "Dr. Sullivan, you don't know me, but you saved my life. I was one of the 27 million people whose data was breached in the DataCore incident. My medical records were stolen. They showed I was HIV positive. Someone outed me to my employer using that stolen data. I lost my job. My family rejected me. I was suicidal. But then I read about how you fought to hold DataCore accountable. How you turned down millions to do the right thing. How you made sure we received support and protection. The identity theft insurance you insisted on implementing paid for legal help. I sued my employer for discrimination and won. I rebuilt my life. I'm married now. Happy. Healthy. And I wanted you to know that your choices 20 years ago directly impacted whether I lived or died. Thank you for being brave enough to fight. Thank you for caring about people you'd never meet. Thank you for showing that one person can make a difference. With gratitude, Michael Chen." I read the email through tears. Sarah found me sitting at my desk, silently crying. "Emma, what's wrong?" I showed her the email. She read it, then pulled me into a hug. "This is why you did it," she whispered. "This is why it mattered." "I never knew," I said, my voice breaking. "I never knew there were actual people, actual lives affected by those decisions. It was just data. Just numbers." 27 million records felt abstract. But they weren't abstract. They were Michael. And thousands of others like him. I wiped my eyes. I need to respond. What will you say? I thought about it. About the scared woman I'd been 20 years ago, standing in a hallway while her career burned. About the choices I'd made. About Michael Chen, whose life had hung in the balance of my decision. I typed, Michael, thank you for sharing your story. I'm so sorry for what you went through, and so grateful that you survived. You give me too much credit. I wasn't particularly brave. I was angry and stubborn and terrified of what would happen if I stayed silent. But I'm profoundly glad that my choices helped you in some small way. The truth is, you saved yourself. You found the strength to rebuild. You fought your own battles. You survived. That took courage, I can only imagine. I wish I could have prevented the breach entirely. I wish Marcus Brennan had never stolen your data. I wish you'd never had to suffer. But since I couldn't prevent it, I'm grateful I could at least help with the aftermath. Please take care of yourself. And thank you for reminding me why this work matters. With respect and gratitude, Emma. I hit send, then sat back. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked quietly. The life you could have had if you'd just taken the money and walked away. Every single day, I admitted. I think about alternate timelines where I'm on a beach somewhere, wealthy and anonymous and unburdened by responsibility. But I wouldn't be me. The person who took the money isn't the person I wanted to be. And Michael Chen would be dead. That's dramatic. That's real. I closed my laptop. We make choices. They ripple outward in ways we can't predict or control. All we can do is try to make the ripples positive instead of destructive. When did you become a philosopher? Around year 3 of teaching ethics to engineering students who think they're going to change the world with apps. Sarah laughed. Speaking of which, how's this semester's class? Brilliant and naive in equal measure. Just like I was at that age. You still are. Brilliant, anyway. The naive part wore off. The naive part died in an auditorium 20 years ago. And look what grew in its place. I glanced around my office, modest university space, filled with books and student projects and letters from former students. No corporate corner office. No executive perks. No wealth or fame or power. Just work that mattered. People who'd learned from my mistakes and successes. A life built on principles instead of profits. Yeah, I said softly. Look what grew. 25 years after Marcus Brennan tried to destroy me, I gave my final lecture. I was 62 years old, retiring after 15 years of teaching. The auditorium, not the same one where my career had nearly ended, but similar enough to evoke memories, was packed with current students, former students, colleagues, and friends. Sarah sat in the front row, older now but still fierce. Patricia Chen was there, retired from DataCore's board. Jennifer Watts, who'd gone on to become an exceptional CEO. Douglas Hightower, who'd become a friend over the years. And dozens of others whose lives had intersected with mine. I stood at the podium, looking out at the faces, and felt the weight of a quarter-century of choices. 25 years ago, I was fired in front of 300 people. Accused of crimes I didn't commit. Dragged out by security while the whole world watched. It was the worst day of my life. It was also the day I learned who I really was. Marcus Brennan, some of you are too young to remember him, tried to make me a scapegoat for his own crimes. He had all the power. All the money. All the authority. And I had nothing but the truth and the stubbornness to fight for it. I've spent 25 years thinking about that moment. About the choice I faced. Take the money or fight for what's right. Disappear quietly or risk everything for justice. And I've realized something important. It wasn't actually a choice. Not for me. Because the person who would have taken that money wasn't the person I am. She was someone else. Someone I couldn't be, even if I'd wanted to. We like to think we make choices. But really, our choices reveal who we already are. Marcus chose greed and power because that's who he was. I chose truth and accountability because that's who I am. The circumstances just forced us both to show ourselves clearly. Over these 15 years of teaching, I've tried to help you understand something crucial. The The person you are in moments of crisis is the person you've been building all along. You don't suddenly become brave or ethical or principled when the stakes are high. You become what you've been practicing being. So if you want to be someone who stands up to injustice, start practicing now. In small ways. In daily choices. In how you treat colleagues and build systems and respond to pressure. Because someday, maybe not today, maybe not next year, but someday you'll face your own auditorium moment. Your own crisis. Your own choice between what's easy and what's right. And in that moment, you won't rise to the occasion. You'll default to what you've practiced being. I paused, looking at the young faces in the crowd. So many of them reminded me of myself at their age, idealistic, brilliant, naive about how hard the real world would be. I can't promise that doing the right thing will work out well. Michael Chen, I held up a printed copy of his email, got his data stolen, his privacy violated, his life nearly destroyed. And he was just one of 27 million people who suffered because of corporate greed. I can't promise that speaking up will save your career. Sometimes it ends it. Sometimes you become unemployable. Sometimes you lose everything. But I can promise you this, you'll be able to live with yourself. You'll sleep at night. You'll look in the mirror without flinching. And 25 years later, you'll stand in front of a room full of people and know that you were on the right side of history. Marcus Brennan is 83 years old now, rotting in a prison cell. He'll die there. His name is synonymous with corporate fraud. His legacy is a warning about unchecked greed. I'm 62 years old, retiring to spend time with family and maybe write a book about ethical engineering. My name is associated with accountability and reform. My legacy is the students in this room and the systems they'll build. We both made our choices. We both got what we earned. I looked directly at the students. So here's my final question for you. What do you want your legacy to be? Not your job title or salary or fame. Those are externalities. What do you want to be known for? What do you want people to say about you when you're gone? What kind of ripples do you want your life to create? Because I promise you, the answer to those questions will determine every important choice you make. So choose wisely. Choose early. And choose the version of yourself you can be proud of. I stepped back from the podium. That's all I have to teach you. Go build something good. The standing ovation lasted longer than my lecture. Students rushed forward with questions, hugs, gratitude. I tried to speak with as many as possible, knowing these would be my last conversations as their professor. One student, a young woman who'd struggled with ethics questions all semester, waited until the crowd cleared. Dr. Sullivan, she said hesitantly, I got a job offer from a company that, I'm not sure their practices are ethical. But it pays incredibly well. What should I do? I smiled. You already know the answer. But what if I'm wrong? What if I'm being too idealistic? Then you'll find another job. There are ethical companies that pay well. You don't have to compromise your principles for a paycheck. But what if, no more what ifs, I interrupted gently. You know what's right. You just want permission to choose the easier path. I can't give you that permission. Only you can decide who you want to be. She nodded slowly. You're right. I know what to do. Good. And when you're standing in front of your own students someday, telling them about the hard choices you made, you'll be grateful you chose well. She hugged me quickly and left. I watched her go, hoping she'd find the strength to follow through. Sarah approached, linking her arm through mine. Ready to retire? Ready to start the next chapter? Which is? I have no idea, I admitted. Maybe I'll finally take that vacation. See the world without worrying about system failures and corporate fraud. Or maybe you'll consult. Write. Mentor. Continue fighting for ethics in technology from outside the academy. Maybe. We'll see. We walked out of the auditorium together, leaving behind 15 years of teaching and 25 years of fighting and a lifetime of choices that had defined who I'd become. 1 year after retirement, I published a book, The Auditorium, One Woman's Fight for Corporate Accountability. It wasn't a memoir, I still hated the idea of being the center of attention. Instead, it was a case study. A detailed examination of corporate fraud, ethical decision-making, and the systems that enable bad actors. Marcus Brennan's story was in there, but so were dozens of others. Theranos, Enron, WorldCom. The patterns that repeated across decades and industries. The warning signs people ignored. The whistleblowers who were punished for speaking truth. The book became required reading in business ethics courses nationwide. Not because it was particularly well written. I was an engineer, not a poet, but because it was honest. Unflinching. Real. I did a small book tour, 6 cities, 12 events. At every stop, people approached with their own stories. Their own auditorium moments. Their own struggles with choosing right over easy. At the final event in San Francisco, an elderly man waited until the signing line had cleared. "Dr. Sullivan," he said quietly, "I was one of the board members at DataCore. 25 years ago, I voted to uphold Marcus's decision to fire you. I believed his lies about corporate espionage." I set down my pen, studying his face. I didn't remember him specifically. The board had been a blur of suits and skeptical faces. "I wanted to apologize," he continued. "I should have questioned Marcus more carefully. I should have demanded real evidence. I should have protected you." "Why didn't you?" "Because it was easier to believe Marcus. He was charismatic. Confident. And you were just an employee. Not someone with power or influence." He looked down. "I'm ashamed of that calculation now." "What changed?" "I read your book. I saw the pattern. The way powerful people convince boards to go along with unethical decisions. The way we prioritize smooth operations over justice." He met my eyes. "I served on 4 other boards after DataCore. I'd like to think I did better. Asked harder questions. Demanded more evidence. Protected more people." "Did you?" "I tried. I don't know if it was enough." I considered his words. This man had been part of my humiliation 25 years ago. He'd enabled Marcus's scheme, even unknowingly. He'd failed in his duty to oversee the company responsibly. But he'd also learned. Changed. Tried to do better. "Thank you for telling me," I said finally. "And for trying to do better. That's all any of us can do, learn from failures and try to be better going forward. You're more gracious than I deserve." "I'm not gracious. I'm just tired of holding grudges. They're heavy, and I've carried enough weight for one lifetime." He shook my hand, tears in his eyes, and left. Sarah, who'd been watching from nearby, approached. "That was kind of you. It was honest." "I meant what I said. I'm done carrying that weight. Marcus dies next month." I looked at her sharply. "What?" "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. He's been in the prison medical facility for 3 months. Sarah pulled out her phone, showing me a news article. "He's requested to speak with you before he dies." My heart lurched. Why would he want that? The article doesn't say. But his lawyer contacted me officially. "Marcus is requesting a final meeting. No press. No recording. Just a conversation. Do you think I should go?" Sarah shrugged. "That's not my decision. But I'll support whatever you choose." I thought about Marcus. About the man who'd tried to destroy me. Who'd stolen identities and committed fraud and ruined lives for profit. Who'd spent 25 years in prison regretting his choices. "No," I said finally. "I don't need closure from Marcus Brennan. I found closure 25 years ago when I walked out of that auditorium with my integrity intact." "You're sure?" "I'm sure. Whatever he wants to say, whatever confession or apology or justification, I don't need to hear it. That chapter of my life is closed." "Okay." Sarah put her phone away. "Then we won't mention it again." Marcus Brennan died 3 weeks later. The obituaries were brutal, listing his crimes first, his accomplishments as footnotes. His family didn't hold a public funeral. No former colleagues spoke at his memorial. He died alone, unmourned, remembered only as a cautionary tale. I felt nothing when I heard the news. Not satisfaction or vindication or even pity. Just a distant acknowledgement that a character in my story had reached their final chapter. The real story wasn't about Marcus. It never had been. It was about the 27 million people whose data was protected because I fought back. About the 38 other executives who went to prison because investigators found the pattern. About the industry-wide reforms that made breaches harder and accountability stronger. It was about Michael Chen, alive and thriving because someone fought for his right to privacy. It was about hundreds of students who learned that ethics mattered more than profit. It was about every person who'd ever faced an auditorium moment and chosen truth over convenience. That was the story that mattered. 30 years after the auditorium incident, I attended a ceremony I never expected to see. Congress passed the Corporate Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act, comprehensive legislation that strengthened protections for people who spoke up against corporate fraud. The bill was nicknamed Sullivan's Law by the media, though I'd had nothing to do with drafting it. Dr. Sullivan, the senator who'd sponsored the bill, said, "Your courage 30 years ago helped spark a movement. This legislation exists because you showed that one person can make a difference. Thank you for your service to this country." I accepted the ceremonial pen used to sign the bill, knowing it would end up in a drawer somewhere. These kinds of honors always felt strange. I'd just done what needed doing. But Sarah, standing beside me, whispered, "Let yourself have this moment. You earned it." So I smiled for the cameras and shook hands with politicians and accepted congratulations from people who'd followed my case decades ago. And I thought about the scared woman I'd been 30 years ago, watching her career implode in real time, wondering if she'd ever recover. If I could go back and tell her anything, what would I say? That it would all work out. That justice would prevail. That she'd eventually be honored for her choices? No. Because those things weren't guaranteed. Sometimes justice fails. Sometimes bad people win. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you everything and gives you nothing in return. Instead, I'd tell her, "You're stronger than you know. You'll survive this. And 30 years from now, you'll understand that the worst day of your life was also the day you became who you were always meant to be." Because that was the truth. The auditorium incident didn't make me brave or ethical or principled. It revealed that I already was those things. Marcus Brennan didn't create my character, he just forced me to show it. After the ceremony, a young reporter, probably born after my confrontation with Marcus, asked for an interview. "Dr. Sullivan, what would you say to someone facing a similar situation today? Someone who knows about corporate fraud but is afraid to speak up?" I thought carefully before answering. I'd say this: you can't control the outcome. You can't guarantee justice will prevail. You can't ensure that speaking up will make things better. Then why do it? Because the alternative is living with silence. And silence has a cost too. It costs your integrity, your self-respect, and your ability to look yourself in the mirror. For me, that cost was too high. But you risked everything. I did. And I got lucky. The evidence supported me. I had allies. The system worked, mostly. But it might not have. I might have gone to prison instead of Marcus. I might have lost everything and accomplished nothing. So you're saying people shouldn't speak up? I'm saying people should count the cost. Understand the risks. Build the strongest case possible. Find trustworthy allies. Work within legal systems. And then, if they decide the cause is worth the risk, they should speak up knowing they might lose. That's not a very inspiring message. It's an honest one. Inspiration is easy. Honesty is hard. And people facing these decisions deserve honesty, not fairy tales about how everything works out fine for whistleblowers. The reporter frowned. But it worked out fine for you. Did it? I lost 6 years of work that was deleted. I couldn't get another corporate job for 3 years because I was difficult. I spent months terrified I'd go to prison. I lost relationships because I was consumed by the case. I have PTSD from the stress. I leaned forward. Yes, eventually I rebuilt. But there were costs. Real costs. Anyone who tells you whistleblowing is easy or safe or guaranteed to work out is lying. Then why encourage it at all? Because sometimes the costs of silence are even higher. Because 27 million people deserved better. Because companies need to know they can't commit fraud without consequences. Because the next person who faces an auditorium moment needs to know someone else survived it. The reporter nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty. That's all I have left to give. Now, as I write this final section, I'm 70 years old. It's been 40 years since Marcus Brennan had me dragged out of that auditorium. 40 years since I made the choice that defined my life. I'm sitting in my study, looking at mementos from 4 decades of fighting for what's right. The award from the National Cybersecurity Alliance. The ceremonial pen from Sullivan's Law. Letters from students. Michael Chen's email, printed and framed. Sarah's wedding invitation, she finally married at 65, and I was her maid of honor. And tucked in a folder labeled Closed Chapters, Marcus Brennan's final letter from prison. I pull it out sometimes, when I need reminding of why the fight mattered. Not because I hate Marcus, I don't, not anymore. But because his words capture something true about choice and consequence. I had everything, and it meant nothing. Marcus spent 25 years in prison learning what I'd always known, that success without integrity is just elaborate failure. That power without ethics is just sophisticated tyranny. That winning through fraud means losing the only game that matters, the ability to respect yourself. My phone rings. It's a former student, now leading a major tech company's security division. Dr. Sullivan, she says excitedly, I wanted to tell you we just shut down a project that would have compromised user privacy. The CEO was furious. He threatened to fire me. But I stood firm, cited ethical principles you taught, and the board backed me up. How do you feel? I ask. Terrified. Exhilarated. Proud. Like I just had my own auditorium moment, but in a conference room. You did. And you chose well. Because you showed me how. After we hang up, I sit in the afternoon sunlight, thinking about legacy. Marcus Brennan's legacy is warning signs and cautionary tales. Mine is students who make ethical choices and systems built on principle and a world slightly more accountable than before. I don't know which of us got the better deal. Actually, that's a lie. I know exactly which of us got the better deal. So what happened after that terrible day in the auditorium? Everything. I lost a job and gained a purpose. I lost security and gained integrity. I lost Marcus Brennan's empire and built my own legacy, one student and one ethical choice at a time. The screens flashed primary key missing and Marcus screamed for me to fix it. But I didn't. I walked away. I let his empire collapse under the weight of its own corruption. And from those ruins, something better grew. Not perfect. Not easy. Not guaranteed. But better. That's all any of us can do, make the world slightly better than we found it, one choice at a time, one auditorium moment at a time. And if you ever face your own Marcus Brennan, your own moment of truth, your own choice between easy money and hard integrity, I hope you choose what you can live with. I hope you count the cost and decide you're worth more than silence. I hope you find allies who'll stand with you when everything collapses. And I hope, 40 years later, you'll sit in sunlight and know you made the right choice. Because in the end, that's all that matters. Not the awards or recognition or legislation bearing your name. Just the quiet certainty that when it counted most, you stood up. What would you do in this situation? Would you take the money and walk away, or would you risk everything for the truth? Tell me in the comments, I read every single one. And if this story moved you, if it made you think about your own choices and integrity and the price of doing what's right, hit that subscribe button. Because there are more stories like this. More moments when ordinary people face extraordinary choices. More reminders that one person really can make a difference. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for caring about ethics and accountability and truth. And remember, your auditorium moment is coming. Start practicing now for who you want to be when it arrives.